Hi, friends. This is Mrs. Dennis, and I have another read aloud for you today. Today's read aloud is our story that we've been reading, The Wind in the Willows, Chapter 10. Chapter 10 is titled The Further Adventures of Toad. Now, this is another chapter about Toad, and we're still thinking about themes. So I want you to think about, what does the author want you to learn from this chapter? What message is he trying to send? Think about Toad and how irresponsible he's been over the last few chapters. Does he continue with that irresponsibility, or does he change and finally grow into a responsible person? I want you to be able to determine that. So here we go. The front door of the hollow tree faced eastward, so Toad was woken up at an early hour. The bright sunlight was streaming in on him, and his toes were exceedingly cold. Just before he woke up, he had been dreaming that he was at home in bed on a cold winter's night. He would probably have been aroused much earlier had he not slept for some weeks on straw strewn on a stone floor. Sitting up, he rubbed his eyes first and his complaining toes next, wondered for a moment where he was, then, with a leap of the heart, remembered everything: his escape, his flight, his pursuit, and that he was free. Free! The word and the thought alone were worth 50 blankets. He shook himself and combed the dry leaves out of his hair with his fingers. He marched forth into the comfort morning sun. Cold, but confident, hungry, but hopeful. He had the world all to himself that early summer morning, the dewy woodland, the green fields, the road itself. Toad, however, was looking for something that could talk and tell him clearly which way he ought to go. The country road was presently joined by a canal. Toad, having traveled fairly extensively, knew that both the road and the canal were coming from somewhere and going to somewhere. "That's a fact, Toad, my boy," he proclaimed confidently as he marched along by the water's edge. Round a bend in the canal came plodding a solitary horse. From a rope attached to his collar stretched a long, taut line. Toad let the horse pass him. With a pleasant swirl of quiet water, a barge slid up alongside of him. The barge's brightly painted gunwale was level with the towing path, and its sole occupant was a large woman wearing a sunbonnet. Friends, a gunwale is the top edge around the deck of a boat. "A nice morning, ma'am," he remarked to Toad as she drew up level with him. "I dare say it is, ma'am," responded Toad politely, as he walked along the tow path abreast of her. "I dare say it is a nice morning to them that's not in trouble like what I am. Here's my married daughter. She asked me to come to her at once, so off I comes, not knowing what may be happening, but fearing the worst, and I've left my business to look after itself. I'm in the laundering line, and I've left my young children too. I've lost all my money, and lost my way, and as for what might be happening with my married daughter, why, I don't like to think of it, ma'am." "Where might your married daughter be living, ma'am?" asked the barge woman. "She lives near to the river, ma'am," replied Toad, "close to a fine house called Toad Hall. Perhaps you may heard of it." "Toad Hall? Why, I'm going that way myself," replied the barge woman. "This canal joins the river some miles further on, a little above Toad Hall, and then it's an easy walk. I'll give you a lift." She steered the barge close to the bank, and Toad stepped lightly on board and sat down with great satisfaction. "Toad's luck again," thought he. "So you're in the laundering business, ma'am," said the barge woman politely. "And a very good business you've got, too." "Finest business in the whole country," said Toad airily. "All the gentry come to me. Wouldn't go to anyone else. You see, I understand my work thoroughly and attend to it all myself. Washing, ironing, clear starching, making up gents' fine shirts for evening wear. Everything's done under my own eye." "But surely you don't do all that work yourself, ma'am?" asked the barge woman respectfully. "Oh, I have girls," said Toad lightly. 20 girls or thereabouts." "So do I too," said the barge woman with great heartiness. "It seems you are very fond of washing." "I love it," said Toad. "Never so happy as when I've got both arms in the wash tub." "What a bit of luck meeting you," observed the barge woman. "Why, what do you mean?" asked Toad nervously. "Well," replied the barge woman, "I like washing too, but my husband, he's such a fellow for shirking his work and leaving the barge to me. I simply do not have a moment to see my own affairs. By rights he ought to be here now, instead of which he's gone off with the dog to see if they can't pick up a rabbit for dinner. Says he'll catch me up at the next lock. But meanwhile, how am I to get on with my washing?" "Oh, never mind about the washing," said Toad, not liking the subject. "Try and fix your mind on that rabbit. Got any onions?" "I can't fix my mind on anything but my washing," said the barge woman. "And I wonder you can be talking of rabbits with such a joyful prospect before you. There's a heap of things of mine that need washing. If you'll just take one or two of the most necessary sort, I won't venture to describe them to a lady like you, and put them through the wash tub, why, it'll entertain you and help me. You'll find a handy tub and soap on a kettle on the stove." "Here, you let me steer," said Toad, now thoroughly frightened, "and you can get on with your own washing. I'm more used to gentlemen's things myself." "Let you steer?" replied the barge woman, laughing. "It takes some practice to steer a barge properly. No, you shall do the washing, and I'll stick to steering. Don't try and deprive me of the pleasure of giving you a treat." Toad was fairly concerned. He saw that there was no means of escape, and resigned himself to his fate. "If it comes to that," he thought in desperation, "I suppose any fool can wash." Toad fetched a tub, soap, and other necessaries from the cabin, selected a few garments at random, and set to. A long half-hour passed, and every minute of it saw Toad getting crosser and crosser. Nothing that he could do would remove the stubborn grind. Once or twice he looked nervously over his shoulder at the barge woman, but she appeared to be gazing out in front of her. His back ached badly, and he noticed with dismay that his hands were beginning to get all crinkly. A burst of laughter made him straighten himself and look around. The barge woman was leaning back and laughing unrestrainedly. "I've been watching you," she gasped. "I thought you must be a humbug all along. Never washed so much as a dishcloth in your whole life, I'll bet." Friends, a humbug means a person who is faking. Toad's temper, which had been simmered for some time, now fairly boiled over, and he lost all control of himself. "You silly barge woman," he shouted. "Don't you dare talk to me like that. I would have you to know that I am a very respected Toad. I may be under a bit of a cloud at present, but I will not be laughed at by a barge woman." The woman moved nearer to him and peered under his bonnet. "Why, so you are," she cried, "a horrid, nasty, crawly Toad. And in my nice clean barge too. Now that is a thing I will not have." She relinquished the tiller for a moment. One big mulcted arm shot out and caught Toad by a foreleg, while the other gripped him fast by a hind leg. Then the world turned upside down, and Toad found himself flying through the air. The water, when he eventually reached it, proved quite cold. He rose to the surface, spluttering. When he had wiped the duckweed out of his eyes, the first thing he saw was the barge woman looking back at him, laughing. Toad vowed revenge. He struck out for the shore and climbed up the steep bank. Gathering up his wet skirts, he ran after the barge as fast as his toad legs would carry him. The barge woman was still laughing when he drew up level with her. "Put yourself through your mango, washerwoman," she called out, "and iron your face, and you'll pass for quite a decent-looking toad." Toad never paused to reply. Solid revenge was what he wanted, and he saw it just ahead of him. Running swiftly, he overtook the solitary horse, unfastened the tow rope, jumped on the horse's back, and urged it to gallop forward. He steered the horse toward the open country, abandoning the tow path. He looked back and saw that the barge had run aground on the other side of the canal. Toad laughed aloud as he continued to spur the horse onward. The barge horse was not capable of galloping about the countryside, and its gallop soon subsided into an easy walk. But Toad was quite contented with this, knowing that the barge was not moving at all. Okay, friends, that is the end of the read aloud. As always, there are going to be some discussion questions I want you to answer. And the discussion questions help you with an understanding of the story, and they help you with your comprehension. So I try not to give you more than maybe 4 discussion questions. This particular chapter, I have about 10. I am not going to give you all, but I am going to talk about them a little bit. So, let's think about this. Did you think that Toad would still continue to fool people, or did you think that he was going to become responsible somehow? And I think the answer to that question is going to be no. I don't think that Toad has learned to be responsible yet. So when we talk about the next question is from perspective. Which character's perspective is today's read aloud experienced, right? Whose perspective is this story from? And this particular story is being told from Toad's perspective. One of your discussion questions I'm going to post: what does Toad encounter after walking in the hollow of a tree in the woods? All right. So what does Toad encounter? Another question: what does the barge woman have Toad do that he calls his fate or destiny? All right. Another discussion question: Toad is disguised as or dressed up pretending to be a washerwoman. Does he fool the barge woman for very long? And then that's going to be a yes or no question. And then what happens to uncover his disguise? Okay. Your next question: how does Toad get his revenge for being made fun of and being thrown off the barge? So I want you to think about that. What did he do? And it wasn't a very responsible thing to do. So this is another question, and this one might be a little bit more difficult. So let's talk about it. The question says, "And what animal in today's read aloud is not personified?" So do you remember when we talked about personification, right? Giving a non-human thing human characteristics, right? So let's think about this. Do toads talk? No, they don't. Do moles talk? No, they don't. Do rats talk? Absolutely not. They don't. So there was an animal in our story today that did not talk, that did not have human-like traits. What animal was that? What animal did Toad steal? That's right, he stole the horse. The horse was not personified. The horse did not show any human traits. And how do we know? We know because it doesn't talk or act like a person, right? So if an animal talks or acts like a person, it's being personified. That's personification. But the horse doesn't talk or act like a person. And do you think Toad was right to seek revenge on the barge woman? Do you think it's right, just in general, to seek revenge on someone? I think you're right. I do not think it is a good idea to seek revenge on anybody. Nope, not a good idea. So, that's it for today. I want you to make sure that you go and answer the discussion questions, and that's all for now.